Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back. So you now have your 508. You have a specific nature of business that you engage in. Quite often you will hear me go on about real estate, real estate. There are many types of real estate. If you want to focus on land, that's one. If you want to focus on storage units, that's two. That storage unit can be based on bigger storages or small ones like you see U-Haul. U-Haul, believe it or not, is really a storage company. The portion where they rent their vehicles is a subsidiary of storage. And then there are other things like personal storages where you can put some of your household items in it, or some commercial storage. Or when it comes to residential, you can either go family or larger with multi-family, so and so. You probably heard me in the past mention the fact that all my businesses are informative, and you can turn that into interfacing with other human beings and assisting other human beings and be justly compensated for it. Because if the 508 has a hold of a property through control or ownership, whereby the name of it is on the deed, that 508 entity that owns that property can now assist other human beings by renting it out. In other words, public use, which is renting it out, and just compensation for private property, reaffirmed in the amendment. Fifth Amendment, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property held by the 508 without due process of law, nor shall private property, when that 508 holds title to a property in its name, it is its private property. When that religious entity holds private property in its name, it is its private property. And according to the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, no private property shall be taken for public use without. See, the Constitution speaks in two main varying degrees of state of mind. First is a commandment, and two is a form of injunction, aka prohibition, where it tells you Congress shall do this or Congress shall not do this. Prohibition, commandment. It's a foundational principles that Congress of the state, meaning the legislative department that makes laws. Because if anyone is going to say you've done something wrong, they're going to have to point to a law. Other than that, it's anarchy. Other than that, it's just conjecture. And oftentimes they want to complete their game in courthouses. Therefore, this foundation limits them that, look, you cannot prohibit someone from exercising their religion if they say that they want to. Even if you run a religious or tax-exempt entity, you still have the right to make money, to keep the business going, to the exercise or performance by such organization of its purpose or function constituting the basis of its exemption. If you are outside of religious purpose, or aka purpose, which you will put on the face of your constitution and bylaw, if you're using that specific 508, particularly for real estate. I just told you the purpose in so many different words. You can literally pause this video, slow it down. I don't know if people realize this, but since these videos are being uploaded through YouTube, you can click the little wheel, the setting, and then click the speed of how you want the video to be played, fast or slow. And you can begin to type it out as your purpose. I'm giving you the cheat sheet right here. But the cheat sheet and the purpose of why you can or cannot do something ought not to be just limited to what you put on paper. You must know it in the back of your mind that you can just have a regular conversation with it. Because it ought to be your business. That is the business that you are minding. That's what you have in mind, aka that's your purpose. Therefore, that's how you relate to other human beings, associate yourself with other people in society to become a useful member. And thus, through that, you get rewarded for it. Simple as that. The code defines an unrelated tax of business as, quote, any trade or business, the conduct of which is not substantially related to the exercise or performance by such organization of its purpose or function. Purpose is what you put down on pen and paper to establish it. Function is other related things, such as your expense of you want to buy this, you want to buy that to maintain it, you want to hire a contractor, you want to hire an engineer to do some type of examination of what the property is worth. You have to compensate them for all that. And in order to compensate all these other third parties, you have to first make the money in the business name. That's called function, aka operational expense, constituting the basis for its exemption. This is the game that I'm giving you. Put it to use. The tax on unrelated business income first appeared in the code in 1950. Congress's principal purpose in enacting UBIT was, meaning unrelated business income tax, was to provide a level, competitive playing field for tax-paying business, meaning other chumps who pay taxes for their business alike. Tax-exempt entity can do the same thing we are and not get dinged. So, of course, some people lobbied. But guess what? We'll read out that ended. So the tax-exempt organization could not use their privileged tax status to unfairly compete, which makes sense. The playing field must be even though they can also create the same entities. But of course, there's certain benefits and certain types of grants that only exist for LLCs. And of course, the state of so-and-so has to make money by taxing people. So you usually push it through attorneys and through bankers to say, hey, look, file LLCs, do S Corp, do C Corps. And when you start to do operating agreement with other third parties and managing partners and entities, it's easier to usurp LLCs and whatnot compared to constitutional entities that's not tied to someone else's yearly report and payment or taxes that's lying in someone else's pocket. So they say, we're still going to keep these public entities alive, but there are other types of entities that can kick our ass. And this is as far as 1950. Most people listening to this has probably not even been born at that point. I wasn't born around that time. Yet, just so you know, people have been doing what I'm telling you for a while now. It's not something new. It's not some new method that came out 10, 20 years ago. This is a regular scheduled program based on principles aforementioned. It goes on to say, so that tax-exempt organizations could not use their privileged tax status to unfairly compete with tax-paying businesses in activities unrelated to their purpose, meaning they might step outside of their purpose and still not qualify for tax. So we have to make certain standards clear. So there are 3 tests to determine whether any type of religious entities, or aka tax-exempt entities, such as 508 or 501c3s, whether they qualify for tax as they make money, whether it's related to business or not as they make money. There are 3 of them. And then there are exclusions or exceptions to say, regardless of these 3, you can still do this. And that is the key, the exclusion and the exceptions. Let's keep reading. But instead of prohibiting tax-exempt entities from engaging in any business activities at all, which they can't, and denying or revoking tax-exempt because of such activity. See, they put and denying or revoking tax-exempt in parentheses because now they're referring to deductions are permitted for expenses that are directly connected with the carrying or related trade business, and net operating loss are allowed to be carried forward and backward, blah, blah. So you can still deduct that. Because remember, gross is calculation before tax. Net is calculations of what you're in after tax. And tax credit are applied to gross. And part of it is operating loss and things like property is not always just real, aka physical house. Property can be something that's intangible, intellectual property, royalties, cash flow, qualified convention or trade show income, interest, dividends, annuities, and certain capital gains, certain rental income. Oh my God. Certain rental income is classified as an exclusion, even if the problem with rights has always been that people always look in the wrong places. Many people, when it comes to taxation and lack thereof, look at the Constitution with the Congress and being the only one that can apportion and lay taxes and excise. But the Congress is the one who makes laws. Therefore, all these public laws that are statutized in 26 USC are by Congress. And then people look into the fact that Article 16 of the Constitution is unlawfully ratified in all those. Okay, that's all retroactive. People are looking into the wrong place. for what they call their rights, when in truth the substance is already laid out here as to how it's done. They're prohibited when it comes to religion as to how you can enforce it. Therefore, they cannot lay tax on religious activity. And then take it from there, funnel it or fine tune it into legislative language relating to business and religion. And you see things where it ought to be. Related back to properties, and you see things where it ought to be. No different than how people think executor letter is going to, quote, shut them down, when in fact executor just means someone who acts as a trustee, absent of an actual trust, but in the presence of a constructive trust, which takes power away from you, the one purporting to hold on to something. And ultimately, the true trust document that, quote, shuts them down are trust minutes based on contractual matters. And the word estate just means interest. If you don't have a trust, you have yet to establish an actual interest in anything. People are looking into the wrong place with vague ideas, or when it comes to matters of discharge. They've been so, excuse this word, but people have been mind fucked with so much trash that when they come across the right information, they're trying to conform the right information with that trash. And they confuse themselves because they're constantly used to looking in the wrong place when the answer is so simple. People cannot believe that good things can be so simple and straightforward that they themselves try to complicate it, despite the real thing and the simple answer being in front of them. They themselves look to complicate it. I always say this, information is no different than relationships. Someone can be in a good relationship all they want, but past relationships have screwed their mind up so much that they seek issues, even when everything is perfect. They cannot function absent of problem, absent of feud, absent of fear. Therefore, they create the problem. People suffer from that same syndrome when they come across right information. It's so simple and so straightforward that they hope it's complicated. They read a lot of PDFs, a lot of books, a lot of Facebook posts, all these groups and Telegram that they think for things to be done right, it has to be complex. Sure, you have to know the intricacies, but most people are looking in the wrong place when it comes to intricacies. And they're just running in a circle. And when they do find that dot in that circle, they want to complicate it and hope it's more complex. People are looking in the wrong place. Most of the answers to people's questions when it comes to rights are in the first 10 amendments. I always say these things are just summaries of a given right. The details is what you have to know, which is why I'm doing videos like these. Anyone can tell you that religious entities don't have to qualify for tax. Why, how, the loopholes and exceptions that benefits you, and it's implemented into quote unquote their laws that everyone try to run away from. People don't know, but they just feel like, let me just do the special process over here on this side and I don't have to do anything. But in truth, the real process and what you need is already inside the foundational principles of laws. People are the real problem to their own issue. You know who does this right en masse? The Amish people. Have you ever tried to look into the deeds and records of these properties owned by Amish? And then if you look at a few more acres within those areas, you will realize that those Amish people that you see driving buggies, horses, don't use electricity, or some of them use electricity but limited. Some of these Amish are millionaires. Do you know that? They didn't just turn millionaire just because. Some of their ancestors that came from German and some other part of Dutch-speaking countries were already wealthy, but most of them know about business. Don't get it twisted now because they don't use technology. They build properties and they outsource the plumbing and electricity. And guess what? They use religious entities to hold those properties. They actually rent it out to people around those areas. The people live their lives normally, but the Amish live their lives the way they know how to, but they make cash flow that way. When you start looking into county records, you realize there are people out here that are doing it en masse. But when you hear about the Amish, what have you heard about them? And think about it. that they're disconnected from the world. They live a separate life to religious people, right? But the documentaries and all these things you see on the internet will not tell you is these Amish people own properties using religion, and they are cash flowing from it. And the foundational principle they're using is what we're speaking about here. And to add salt to injury to the most typical mundane people, these Amish people, they live longer lives. Their relationships are good. They respect one another sincerely on a human level. They're sincerely happy. They're healthier mentally. to even add more salt to injury, they know more about how real business work than the average man that has a doctorate degree, a lot of title, and a lot of sense of entitlement. Yet, you have all this degree and you're still struggling to pay a mortgage. Come on. And you have, on the other hand, some man or woman walking barefooted in a farm using cows and horses to plow the field. You look at them on that mundane level, but once you start looking at the core of how they function and they are organized, they use straight trust and constitutional principles. And they have a lot of real, true wealth. People know about these things. Media will feed you trash with what they want you to see. Those who truly function privately, I mean, think about it. This Fifth Amendment is as clear as it gets. It uses that buzzword a lot of people chase after, private property. It doesn't get clearer than this. It's on its face. You cannot miss it. It's right there. Yet everyone goes away from this and do a bunch of other stuff. All these Muslims from other part of the world, all these Africans from other part of the world, they know this game. You, the one here in North America, you were born and raised here, you don't know. It's about time that changes. Stop being mundane. That stuff is not cool. Complete 40-minute videos on the Patreon page. Take care. Best of luck.